Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency by market cap, is also moving higher after falling more than 16%. Well, this recent volatility in digital currencies is a point of discussion at today's Futurist conference in Toronto. The co-founder of Ethereum and one of today's keynote speakers at the conference is a very well-known industry pioneer, Anthony Iorio, and he joins us now. Anthony, great to be with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
I've actually had the privilege of listening to you speak in the past, so we have a lot to cover. And I think investors are really trying to understand the space that you are a pioneer of. Can you take us back a little bit and just describe how the industry looks right now?
Sure. We're in a very early stage still. We're kind of equivalent to where the early 90s of the internet still, and where infrastructure is being built out, where people are trying to understand these technologies that are emerging. And they're hearing how it's going to be impacting their lives and impacting their works and their jobs and their work and jobs and things like that. But they don't really understand it and see what's happening, what's on the horizon. I think it's very similar to what we saw with the early days of the internet. And right now, a lot of the infrastructure is being built out, a lot of the tools and the interfaces that are going to allow people to understand that what's coming, what's on the horizon is technology that's going to make things faster, cheaper, better, that's going to remove a lot of middle layers and intermediaries that provide services right now of trust, things like financial services. It's going to enable technology to replace a lot of these third parties and intermediaries, and it will cause a great change in many different sectors, just like the internet impacted everything with information. Anything to do with the value exchange and services between individuals are going to be impacted with these technologies, and it's the horizon of it, but it is difficult for people to understand and grasp what's happening, but it is on its way, and a lot of infrastructure is growing right now.
What kind of infrastructure, what kind of technologies? We focus so much on the cryptocurrencies in part because that's what investors could invest in, but there's also all this underlying technology that investors probably want to understand more and take more participation in, such as the blockchain. Are we talking about blockchain or what else?
So blockchain is really an underlying technology. You have Bitcoin as the first example of this technology. When Bitcoin came on the scene in 2009, it was for the first time ever it solved a problem in that you could have something digital and not make a copy of it. And that's an amazing thing, because prior to Bitcoin, any attempts to do digital cash or anything digital with assets, you could always duplicate something. So to have an asset that you could hold and prove ownership of, if you could duplicate it, it loses the qualities of things like money. And Bitcoin emerged to solve that problem. And what it's going to enable just a massive growth and touch many sectors in finance. And it's going to be able to, if you could prove ownership of an asset, it could be a deed to a property that you could have now, that you could send to someone else. And the infrastructure that is growing is things like wallets. Wallets are in tune to the browser for the internet. It's the way the masses understand the internet is the browser. They can move information with it. Wallets are the way that you can manage to move value now. And that value can be things like Bitcoin. It can be like Ethereum. And they all have their own purpose, their own value in what they're bringing forward here. So the ability to manage and move value is what's actually is the greatest thing that's happening now here. It's not just information like what the internet did. It's going to be the ability to move value, and it's going to impact not just financial sectors. It's going to impact with things like Ethereum, law, accounting. It's going to give
us an example of this. I've heard you in the past, but give us some examples in terms of how this will change all of those different industries, different dynamics.
So right now we rely on a lot of third parties, so middlemen. We have lawyers that deal with a lot of things. Now you can have things like code, which is a way that you can have a contract between two people that automatically will execute based on data fed into it. And this could be things like weather data. You could have a contract where a policyholder for insurance companies paying out the policyholder based on a certain amount of rainfall that happens. And it's just a matter of executing a contract automatically without the need of the people and middle layers that are generally doing that. So it's going to be a faster, cheaper, better way of doing things that's going to remove a lot of third parties and intermediaries that we generally have always had to trust to facilitate transactions between individuals.
So how will this evolve where individuals, companies, businesses that at the end of the day have the liability are going to put their trust into this type of technology and remove a person?
Yeah, so these systems are basically, you're saying you're putting your trust into mathematics, you're putting it into decentralized systems, these systems that kind of run on their own, that anybody can participate in. And that's what gives them their strength. They're not decentralized systems. We're so used to these centralized systems, and when we've seen hacks in the past happen, it's generally due to things like trying to secure centralized systems. So when we've seen credit card hacks, or it's generally because they're trying to hold something in a single location. Whereas these new technologies are decentralized systems, and they're much less prone to physical attacks. They're more secure, and the stronger they become, the more secure these systems come.
It's so interesting, though, Anthony, because we're talking about the technology that will evolve. Let's go back to the cryptocurrency for a moment, because some money managers have certainly said, well-respected Wall Street money managers have said that cryptocurrencies is a solution looking for a problem, that we really don't need cryptocurrencies. You say what to that?
Well, it's not even the currency side of things is the first application of these technologies.
Yeah. Are we getting too wrapped up in that?
I think so.
Like?
I think it's very early on right now. It's not about, there's people that are checking these markets every day and they're seeing things go up and down wildly. What that's showing is that there's a lot of innovation happening. There's a lot of infrastructure being grown here. And the pricing is not a really important thing, that at least I see it right now. It's understanding that how these technologies will be a most important thing since we've had the internet. That's what's going to happen with these. And we're starting to see companies form and startups grow, and we're seeing accelerator and projects starting in different countries and cities. Like Toronto just announced the Founders Institute is coming up here, which is a massive tech hub accelerator project. And we're starting to see these come around, and people are latching onto blockchain and using these technologies to build new companies and new startups in many, many different sectors. So they're understanding the impact is going to be huge. It's just a matter of the tangibleness that we haven't seen yet. And that's where the interfaces are growing, the ways that people are going to connect and interface. That's what's being built out right now.
Will cryptocurrencies then still continue to be an area that's of interest to invest in, or will it just have been, we'll look back on it and think that that was one of the earlier .com companies that fell away?
So I think that the companies that are providing real value will be the ones that are going to last through. It's the same thing we had with the internet, with the .com bubble. You had all these companies emerging, and the name, just having the word internet and something in your title was leading to your stock prices raising high. But if you're not producing real value and not doing things that are improving people's lives, you're not really producing something of value. And the ones that don't have the value along with what they're doing will be the ones that aren't going to last around. And the ones that do, like we see over time, and we saw with the internet, with the Amazons and the Googles, will be the ones that emerge and actually provide value for people.
Do we have enough information to figure out which ones will last and survive?
No, I don't think so. I find it a very difficult time myself, and I've been in this space for 6 years, to determine which ones will do well and which ones won't. There's thousands of these projects out there, but what that means is that there's innovation, there's competition, and again, the ones that do provide value will be the ones that last out when you have all this competition.
What's value, though, in cryptocurrency?
Value is, are they providing a service that improves people's lives? That's really what innovation is. It's are you doing something that's solving a problem and that's improving people's lives? So let's say you eventually have an Uber system that doesn't require Uber in the middle to be the infrastructure that connects riders and drivers. Technology can replace that layer and connect riders and drivers and make things cheaper, faster, because you don't need to pay a lot of the infrastructures potentially that Uber would be doing in the middle. The same thing applies with Airbnb. Any company that provides a service to connect individuals, technology is coming along to replace that and make things faster.
So do you think then, as we've talked a lot about over the past number of years with these lower for longer interest rates, that one of the drivers of that, of course, has been technology? What you're just describing, it sounds like a situation where we could continue to see lower interest rates because of the because of the amount of people that are going to essentially be losing their jobs potentially over the years. Do you see that?
I don't, because the same thing with the internet came along. It's the same. It opens up new sectors and it opens up new opportunities and new ways to create businesses. So I don't see that. Generally, that's what people think, is it's going to lead to a lot of job loss, but actually it leads to a lot of new growth and new sectors. And countries that understand where this is going have the opportunity to actually do very good things for their citizens by paving the way for great things to happen in their country if they can understand where the technologies are heading.
Is part of the reason for the use of this technology, is it because of security and the need for greater security, and these systems are less hackable? Yeah,
it's a double-edged sword. Yeah, it depends. Something like Bitcoin is extremely secure. It's been around since 2009. Never had a hack that is based on the protocol level or based on its systems. Any hacks that have ever happened are due to third parties and you entrusting third parties like exchanges with your Bitcoin.
Right.
So aside from that, they're very strong because they're incentivizing computing power all around the world to contribute resources to this network to help secure it. And in return, people are earning Bitcoin for doing that. So that's where the security comes from. The more power that's put into the systems, the more secure they become. And they're extremely difficult to hack, and has not happened yet with Bitcoin, hasn't happened with Ethereum. So, but at the same time, if you have a system that doesn't have that much security baked into it, there's potential there. So it's not just a black and white thing with that.
I'm curious, with all of the hacks that we do see occur, how do you personally feel about using things like online banking and online economic activity?
So online stuff, it's generally backed by something, right? So if you're on a bank and you've got your account gets hacked, generally you're going to have a way out because it wasn't your responsibility, it wasn't your fault. That goes up to a certain limit with the banks, it does, but in these systems, you want to hold on to the keys. You want to hold on to your money yourself. And that's what's very powerful about these technologies, that you can be your own bank. You don't need to rely on third parties anymore, but that also takes in a new type of responsibility. And you have to understand how to manage your keys or manage your things. And that's a little change from what people are used to. I think we're going to move into an era where people are more in control of their lives, where we don't have to give out our information, which is the common thing right now, and other companies monetize on that. I think the best way to hold on to your information is to never give it out to someone. So I create wallets, that's what my company does, and we never ask user for information. We never collect user information. The keys are held by the end user, not by us, which means we never have access to their funds. That's a whole new security model, but also requires more responsibility. But that's what's being built out, is these interfaces, these connections, these browsers, if you will, the tools that people will be using to further secure their lives when we move into this new era.
Understood. Just lastly, for viewers listening and watching and saying, I want to be able to participate in this, how does the individual investor participate in this? So
I think the first thing is education. You really have to learn what's going on here. And I think putting your money into things that you don't fully understand is probably not the best solution. I think getting out to events, if you're interested in this, go to conferences, go to meetups that are a great place for people to come together and talk about these technologies. Really understand what's happening, because there is a lot happening. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things that just aren't worthwhile out there, and it really comes with just learning and spending time getting to know what you're getting into.